Hey, how you guys doing? I'm so excited to be back. We took a break last week and it was the longest week for me because I enjoy doing this so much and I enjoy hearing from everyone so much. So I'm glad I'm back this week and I'm super excited. Today, April 26, 2023, Disneyland sued Florida. All right. So we have Disneyland versus Florida. This is an exciting lawsuit, and you're going to be the most knowledgeable person about this lawsuit after this podcast. Okay, so just a brief history of how it was set up. So Walt Disney purchased all this swampland in Central Florida in the 60s, and then in 1967. The state of Florida created a special district for the Walt Disney, and it was called Reedy Creek. Now, the special district is within the Orange County, not the one in California, the one in Florida. So it goes like the state of Florida, Orange County, then this Reedy Creek, which is the district that is where Disney World is located. All right. And for all purposes, right, guess who controls Reedy Creek? Disneyland, right? And so, or Disney World, sorry. So the Disney controls Reedy Creek. Then, where things started shaking up, in March 2022, Florida passed the Parental Rights Act, also called the Don't Say Gay Act. Now, I did a whole podcast just on the Don't Say Gay Act, and I'll put the link in the comments. And then Disney did not like that. So they went on, record saying, we don't like the Don't Say Gay bill and we support, quote what they said, LGBTQIA plus community and everyone's welcome here. And they made sure to, make it known that they were against that bill. All right. Now comes, then DeSantis, Governor DeSantis. He took a special exception to their, their opposition to the bill. And he said, my favorite thing that anyone could say.
Obviously now going to be controlled by the state of Florida, which is no longer self-governing for them. So there's a new sheriff in town, and that's just the way it's going to be.
Yeah, so there you go. Ron DeSantis saying there's a new sheriff in town. I love it when people say there's a new sheriff in town. Don't you guys like it? Oh my God, this Mateo here, you guys can't see him. He's getting freaking too excited, dude. Okay, it's cool. I know, I love it too when they say there's a new sheriff in town. We gotta stay professional, dude. Okay, yeah, there's a new sheriff in town.
There's a new sheriff in town.
And so what he meant by that is he said he is going to take over Reedy Creek district. And remember, that's the district that is controlled by Disney, right? And then this, I love when people do this. It's crazy. He wrote a book here. Check out this book, this memoir. And in it, he talks about very detailed about how he wanted to go after Disney because of this opposition to the Don't Say Gay bill. And he straight said it in his book. In promising to work to repeal the bill, the company was pledging a frontal assault on a duly enacted law. He's talking about Disney. And as a consequence, things are going to get worse for Disney, right? And he put it in his book. And this is important because in the lawsuit, they're saying that he took, retaliatory actions against Disney for their for their free speech. And it's going to be impossible for him to deny it because it's in his book, right? Once it's in the book, it's in the book. All right. Now, let's talk about this lawsuit. Other things that he said in the book real quick. It's too much fun. He says in the book and in different speeches, if Disney wants to embrace woke ideology, it seems fitting that they should be regulated by Orange County. And, so he starts going on the record saying that the Disney's opposition to the Don't Say Gay bill is not well received. Okay. And this is what's going to start all of this, the animosity between the two. Now, what he then did goes like this. In April 2022, all right, so a month after that, he then passed a bill, and he did it secretly. And the beauty in his book is actually a very good book. We'll put a link to the book if you want to buy the book. Whether or not you agree with his politics, he does take some crazy actions, and he has an interesting past. Anyway, so he then goes against Disney, and then he creates a bill, and he does it kind of on a surprise, so Disney can't be prepared. And in his book, he details that he wanted it to be a surprise, like a surprise attack. Mr. Sun Tzu, Art of War here, all right? And the way he does it is he gets a few other legislatures together in the state of Florida, and then they agree, they enact a bill that essentially wipes out Reedy Creek district. Okay. And then once that's wiped out, then it'll be controlled by Orange County instead of this special district. And what that will do is then it's going to, Disney won't have that little district. All right. And that district is important because guess what? If anytime they want to get a road, built, a highway, anytime they want to get some sort of park, anytime they want to get some sort of, drain more land to build, since they control the district, they could easily get the property rights. Do you see what I'm saying? And there's another thing that he kept saying, like, Disney's been getting a freebie, so to speak. Here's this is beautiful. Like, when I kind of realized what Disney was doing, I loved it, right? Because it's so freaking awesome. Okay, so Disney, the one way that they get away with not paying taxes, all right, one of the ways goes like this. Because Reedy Creek is a governmental district, right, a municipality, it could issue bonds, okay, not James bonds, but, financial bonds. And the reason why that's important is, let's say Disney wants to, have a new project, or they want to redevelop, all of the land in the area, or plant 10,000 trees, or create a lake, or whatever they want to do. To raise money for that, they could issue corporate bonds. But why would they do that when Reedy Creek can issue bonds? All right. This is an important one, because the difference here is when a person purchases a bond. So, like, let's say Joe Samo, right? I'm lending Disney, $20,000. Like, I'm part of the people buying the bond, so I'm lending them $20,000. If I'm lending it to Disney, then the interest that I get is taxable. All right. However, if I'm lending it to a municipality and it's a municipal bond, then the interest that I make is not taxable. So the way, one ginormous benefit for Disney is that they could essentially raise money and pay it back with, where the investors are getting tax-free money. And that's beautiful, because then they could either pay a less interest rate, and then the other thing is they could buy the bonds themselves, right? So instead of putting their money in a, saving money in a bank or something, they could just buy these bonds from the government, and then they don't have to pay tax on the interest that they're making. All right. So obviously, when Governor DeSantis is saying we're going to break this Reedy Creek district and we're going to do it ourselves and we're going to control it, Disney's is freaking out. One of the things Disney said is, well, you can't just eliminate the whole district, because then if the district is vanished, then there's no entity that can pay those bonds back, right? So then Governor DeSantis had to come back, and then he said, okay, instead of getting rid of the district, what I'm going to do is this. The district is comprised of a board, kind of like a county board, where there's a county supervisor. And what I'll do, this is Governor DeSantis, is that instead of the board being filled with Disney cronies, all right, I can just picture the board. You got Donald Duck and Mickey Mouse and, and Goofy all on the board, right? So instead of the board being controlled by Disney, I, Governor DeSantis of Florida, will appoint the people, right? And they're not going to be woke. So if they're not woke, they're going to be asleep. No, just kidding. I don't know. But they're not going to be woke and they're not going to be Disney cronies, right? And I'm going to appoint them. And so that's what he ended up doing, okay? So that those bonds can be paid back. Because the last thing they want to do is not pay back bonds, because then that's just going to be a disaster. And more lawsuits and all that. Okay. Now, Disney, what they did is interesting. And this is kind of what, made the news and things like this. Okay. Okay. By the way that Disney was able to get all their people on the board, like the pro-Disney people, is this. They own a lot of land in Reedy Creek. I mean, there's a few other people that own land there, but they had a rule that says to appoint board members, the voters, every entity that owns an acre gets one vote. So it's like one vote per acre. So they own 85% of the land, so they get 85% of the votes, so they control who gets on the board. It wasn't something like, everyone gets one vote. No, it's the property owners. They vote by acre, right? Which is, it's not usual to do something like that. But who's going to contest it, because Disney runs the board anyway, right? So now what's going to happen is then Ron DeSantis said, okay, in June 1 of 2023, then these are going to be the new board members of Reedy Creek. It might have been July 1, but you know what I'm saying. Okay, so on this and this date, let's call it June 1, 2023, we're going to have the new board, the new sheriff in town, right? And we're getting rid of the current board. So what Disney did, this is the kind of the legal shenanigans, and I love this particular thing, this is what made the news in terms of the haggling and whatnot. All right. So before the new board takes over, Disney and the Reedy Creek district, I love the way it was stated in the law firm. This was I think this is one of my favorite quotes ever. All right. The current comprehensive plan. Okay. This is the kind of this agreement that the board and Disney did before the Ron DeSantis board comes in. The Reedy Creek district and Disney began collaborating to settle on amendments captured in the comprehensive plan. That's so funny, the word collaborating, right? Because you have Disney, then you have Reedy Creek, but it's the same thing. They're both Disney, right? So in the laws, I thought that was my favorite quote. Okay, so now what's going to happen? So picture it this way. On June 1, we're going to have a new board, and that new board's going to hate Disney. And right now, the current board, what they did is they entered into really comfy agreements. All right. Those agreements were, yes, Disney can build, 5,000 more hotel rooms. Disney can drain more swamp area. There was a environmental deal. The environmental deal, I loved it. Somehow Reedy Creek approved they said, draining the swamps and everything, and those different species that are going to die because we're going to drain the swamp and put concrete over it. We approve it because Disney bought some land somewhere else and they'll preserve habitat in that other land, and because they're doing that, we will approve this. I mean, it's pretty easy to approve because you have Disney and then the creek, the Reedy Creek are the same entity. All right. And then the other thing they did, this is also what made the news, goes like this. Are you guys ready? This is beautiful. Disney struck a deal with Reedy Creek Government District that said the following. The district will give up its rights to develop and to control and to regulate, and we will allow Disney to kind of take over all those things for as long as the youngest descendant of King Charles plus 21 years. there's this old rule. It's called the rule against perpetuities. And the rule against perpetuities says if I have a property and then I want like something, like I want to put something on the property, or I want to have some sort of rule like, oh, this property has to have, you know, whatever, a home on it, or it has to be for kids, or it has to be blah, blah, blah. I could do it. I can't have it forever. It has to end at least 21 years after some sort of living person dies. All right. So it's a weird rule. But anyway, so not snuck in there, but it's the Disney and Reedy Creek agreed, right, that the Disney will take over, and Reedy Creek eventually Reedy Creek gave up its authority, and it'll get its authority back when, after 21 years after the death of the youngest of King Charles' descendants. So, you know, King Charles has a grandson who's, I think, 2 years old or 1 year old, right? So 21 years after that little kid dies, then Reedy Creek could have their power back, right? Why did they pick Samo's descendants, right? It's you know why? I'll tell you why. It's an old thing that contracts used to do, like, you know, where our government system, right, from England. So there used to be an old contract provision. If I can't write down like, okay, on this property, it'll forever be in the Samo family. I can't do that because that would be against the perpetuity rule. But back in the day in England, right, was it the House of Lords and everything, the big shots, they would want to sound cool and respectful to the king. And so they would say, okay, this property will be in the Samo family until 21 years after the death of the youngest of King, whoever was back in the day. Who was it in the movie Braveheart? Lawshanks, or what was it? Lord Shanks or something. He had a funny name. Anyway, so that's why. So it was like an old English kind of like contract thing. So they wrote it in here. Now, why would anyone agree to that? It's like I said, because Reedy Creek is Disney. Disney's Reedy Creek. So then Ron DeSantis, when his board takes over Reedy Creek, guess what? They're going to say, Disney's going to say, hey, welcome aboard, people. You have no authority. You can't even get coupons to come to Disneyland, right? Because we agreed with your predecessor board that we took over everything. And it was a fair contract, right? We collaborated, remember? And it was a fair contract. And Disney said something like, yeah, and we put, you know, before we agreed, we had like public notices and this and that. It was I know what they did. Not probably. This is what they did. You know, they would put out 1,800 pages of documents, and somewhere in there is this little thing. And nobody would read that, or nobody did read that. And it was signed between Disney and Reedy Creek. And then when the board comes, Ron DeSantis board comes, then there's going to be nothing there. All right. So what Ron DeSantis then said is, when I take over, we are going to void that contract. Okay. And we're going to avoid. And by the way, I think that contract is criminal, man. Like, how does a governmental entity give up authority to a corporation? It's obviously because they were self-interested and, you know, they were like, given consideration, or, you know, they're on the board, or their friends are on the board, or whatever it is, right? Like, how does a government do that? I mean, that to me, that's pretty freaking questionable, but nonetheless, that's what happened, right? So then Ron DeSantis says, well, when my board takes over, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to strike that part of the contract because it's nonsense, and we're going to take over, you know what I'm saying? And we're going to tax Disney, and we're not going to let Disney just build whenever they want. We're going to make them, go through proper procedures and things like that. Okay. Then comes this lawsuit, right? Disney tried to work this out with Governor DeSantis, and they couldn't. Like, he was just like not budging, right? And he had the other legislatures and everything, like, they're going after Disney. They, and this is all over that Don't Say Gay bill, right? So now comes the lawsuit because Governor DeSantis says that as soon as he, like I said, they're going to strike out that provision, and he's taken over. There's a new sheriff, damn it. Now comes the lawsuit. First order of business in the lawsuit, jurisdiction, right? Disney sued Florida in the federal court in the Northern District of Florida. Now, why can they go to federal court? This is important because they are suing the state in the federal court. And the reason why they can do that is because they're claiming that the state violated Disney's freedom of speech. And, that's a federal constitution, right? That's the First Amendment in the federal constitution is the right to free speech. So that is what's called a federal question. And once you have a federal question, then you have subject matter jurisdiction and personal jurisdiction. As long as they sue Florida in the federal court in Florida, that is personal jurisdiction. So that's why it's in Florida. Now, why didn't they sue the state of Florida in the state of Florida court? Right? Obvious reasons. Do you see what I'm saying? Because, they'd have a home field advantage, right? So that's the jurisdictional issue. I think it's proper in the federal court. I don't think if Ron DeSantis, the state of Florida, I don't think they'll be able to challenge and win, removing it from the federal court to the state court. I think it was proper for Disney to sue them in the federal court. All right. Now, what the lawsuit is saying, the lawsuit says that Florida is breaching the contract. And what contract is that? The theory that Disney's saying, the first theory, is that, well, there's a valid contract between Disney and Reedy Creek, and it was signed before the new board is coming. And that valid contract states, that Disney has the proper environmental, authority. They could build these, 5,000 new hotel rooms or 7,000 new hotel rooms, that Disney could expand, that the municipal bonds will be issued in these manner, that the new freeways that will be constructed go like this, blah, 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 right? And that Disney has all the authority to make any amendments, any changes, any building things, anything, until 21 years after the death of the youngest of King Charles's kids. Oh, no, not kids, sorry. Descendants. So it could be great grandkids. Okay. So what the heck? And so that's what's in the contract. Gosh darn it. A contract's a contract, and it was valid. It was done properly, and there you go. And nobody protested before the contract was signed. And obviously because Disney and the Creek were the same people, right? But Disney's saying in this lawsuit, but we disclosed that we're going to sign this contract. It was the public had the opportunity, it was on the website, and we had this hearing, and they could have, we had this much paperwork. Somebody could have read the whole thing and asked about that little provision. Nobody did. So it's all been validly done. And now Ron DeSantis is breaching the contract by saying he's not going to, follow those terms. That's the first order of business. What do you think? Good argument? They're all I don't think that's a good argument, because there's kind of when there's a contract provision that is obviously snuck in, so to speak, and it's an obvious BS provision, even in a commercial contract, the courts have the authority to not enforce it. And clearly here, I think after several years of litigation, after a lot of lawyers make a lot of money, I think a judge will say, give me a flippin' break, right? It was obvious that the contract was done between, self-interested parties, right? And that they kind of did it to pull a fast one, right? Which is cool. I admire it. As a lawyer, I admire that kind of tactic. But I think when push comes to shove, it will be struck down. Okay. And I don't think Disney will win that after years of litigation. Then Disney says in this lawsuit, well, you took away property and rights without compensation. And there's, the due process clause, right? And it says nobody the government can't take. And by the way, the government can't take away, life, liberty, or property without due process. And what that means is if, like somebody has a house or whatever, and the government wants to like widen the road, for the public good use, or, they could do that. They could take the guy's house as long as they have a due process way of paying him for that property. Okay. It's called eminent domain, that one. And there's other things that they could do. Like if they want to like build a drainage, on somebody's properties, so that all the other homes, the sewers could connect or whatever, they can do that. They could take that guy's property and build the flipping sewer there, as long as then they compensate him. So what Disney's saying is, we had a good thing going, right? We had our own government. We had all this tax-free stuff. We had environmental freedoms. We could kill the little freaking squirrel, the endangered this little species of squirrel, and nobody cared, right? We had a flipping great thing going. And now Ron DeSantis is taking it away from us, and we should be compensated for that. And we had this sweetheart contract that we had, and he's taking that away from us, And so if the court is going to rule that they could break that contract, we have to be compensated. And that compensation is, I don't know, that contract is probably worth $40 billion, that kind of sweetheart deal. No taxes on bonds and anything they want to build and blah, 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 right? That's like a windfall of $40 billion that the government took away. So we want that money, darn it, because they took away that. So I think that one will also not win. I think the court will say something like, look, you had a beautiful thing going for 50 years, and there's like bonds that you could issue where the investors don't even have to pay taxes on it, and you could build any flipping freeway and there's gonna be no opposition, and just one vote per acre where you control the whole government. That was a beautiful thing going, but there was no promise that it would go forever. It just changed. So I don't think Disney will win that one either. Okay. The third substantial argument they're saying is this violated our free speech right. And because all of this was done because we oppose, we verbalize our opposition to that Don't Say Gay bill, and that, Governor DeSantis retaliated and came after us because of our opposition. I think, now, by the way, keep in mind, the First Amendment protects people's right to free speech. This is a freaking corporation, but it is well settled Supreme Court law that, corporations in this sense, they have, the same kind of freedom of speech right that people, for the most part. It's not exactly the same, but it's there, right? And that, so Disney is saying that, well, the only reason that Governor DeSantis did all of this is to retaliate against us for our opposition. And it's going to be easy to prove it because Governor DeSantis said in his book, I'm doing this to retaliate against Disney, right? That's great evidence. Okay. And then, so yeah, I think that one, I think Disney can win on, because I think the evidence is so clear that all of this was done to punish them for opposing the bill. Okay. All of it was done, and the evidence is there, and he said it. This is why I'm doing this. And I think that one will prevail. I could be wrong. I'm not going to bet the farm on this. I'm not going to bet the whole swampland on this. But I would say this is the only one that I think Disney has a very good shot. I think Disney's odds of winning this is better than Governor DeSantis's odds. Because if you think about it, if this goes to the Supreme Court or whatever court, and they say, look, it's pretty clear that this will have a chilling effect on free speech, because then other corporations and people, they're not going to, if they oppose a bill, all of a sudden the governor is going to come after you, and he's going to do everything in his power to try to, change the rules on you and things like that. So I think the freedom of speech one is their best shot. I think they have the better case. That's how I see it coming down. All right. There we go. There you have it. That was a lot of fun. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Please keep the comments coming, and I'll see you next week.